Fear doesn't always scream. Some towns hide secrets well. A man dressed in black arrived. Nothing stayed hidden after that. Subscribe. Not for entertainment, but so these stories are never silenced again. Graymere was the kind of town that existed quietly without demanding attention. It appeared on maps, but only faintly, as if even the paper hesitated to remember it. The streets were narrow, the houses old, and the people polite in a way that felt rehearsed. Everyone greeted each other. No one truly spoke. Secrets lived comfortably in Graymere. No one could remember the exact day the man in black arrived. That was the strangest part. There was no first sighting, no sudden appearance. One morning, people simply noticed that he had always been there. He walked the same road every dawn. Black coat, black gloves, black hat pulled low. Even his shoes were black, polished so clean they reflected the sky. There was no dust on him, no sign that the road had ever touched his feet. His steps were measured, calm, as if time adjusted itself to match his pace. Children stopped playing when he passed. Adults looked away. Looking at him made people uncomfortable. Not because he looked dangerous, but because he looked aware, as if he could see things they had spent years hiding. The town gave him a name, as towns often do when faced with the unknown. Mr. Ashen. He never spoke first, never interrupted, never lingered. But if someone spoke to him, he always replied, and his replies stayed with them long after he was gone. One morning, the baker decided to break the silence. "Sir," he said lightly, forcing a smile, "do you own anything that isn't black?" Mr. Ashen stopped. For the first time, he turned fully toward someone. His face was pale, carefully calm, untouched by age in any clear way. His eyes were dark, but not empty. They looked heavy, as if they carried more than one lifetime. "Colors hide stains," Mr. Ashen said softly. "Black reveals them." The baker laughed, but the sound fell flat. That night, he dreamed of his hands, raw, bleeding, kneading dough that whispered his name in accusation. Graymere was not an evil town. It was simply a dishonest one. A judge who accepted favors while preaching justice. A priest who spoke of purity while avoiding his own reflection. Parents who loved their children, but only when it required no sacrifice. And somehow Mr. Ashen passed them all. After his walks, people slept poorly. Mirrors felt unfamiliar. Conversations ended sooner than usual, as if words were afraid of being overheard. Mr. Ashen never threatened anyone, never accused anyone, yet the town felt watched, and deep down Graymere knew something it did not want to admit. The man in black was not bringing fear with him. He was waking it up. After the man in black became part of Graymere's mornings, the town learned a new habit: avoidance. People adjusted their routines without admitting why. Shopkeepers opened later. Children were kept indoors at dawn. Conversations ended the moment his footsteps were heard. No one said his name out loud, as if naming him might invite him closer. But avoidance did not mean escape. Mr. Ashen continued his walks unchanged, unhurried. His presence was calm, almost respectful. That was what unsettled people the most. Fear usually arrived loudly. This one arrived like a reminder. The first to speak to him again was Judge Holloway. The judge was a respected man, gray-haired and well-dressed, known for his speeches about order and fairness. He had decided, very carefully, that he was not afraid of rumors or strangers. One morning, as Mr. Ashen passed the courthouse, the judge stepped forward. "You there," he called. "People are talking." Mr. Ashen stopped. "They always do," he replied. Judge Holloway cleared his throat. "Who are you?" Mr. Ashen considered the question. "Does my name change what you've done?" The judge frowned. "I've done nothing wrong." Mr. Ashen tilted his head slightly. Then why are you asking? The silence between them stretched too long. The judge felt suddenly exposed, as if the street itself were listening. What do you want from this town? The judge asked. I don't want anything, Mr. Ashen said. I only ask questions. What questions? Mr. Ashen stepped closer. His voice remained gentle. Do you believe your verdicts were fair? He asked. Or merely convenient? Judge Holloway felt a sharp heat rise in his chest. That's an accusation. No, Mr. Ashen replied. It's an invitation. The judge turned away without another word. That night he wrapped his hands in cloth before sleeping. He dreamed they were stained, no matter how hard he scrubbed. Word spread quickly, not of what Mr. Ashen said, but of how it felt to speak with him. He did not judge. He did not threaten. He simply refused to accept comfortable lies. The priest avoided the road entirely. The schoolteacher took sick leave. The butcher began closing early, claiming headaches that medicine could not cure. And yet, there were those who felt drawn to him. A young boy named Elias watched from his bedroom window every morning. Unlike the adults, Elias did not look away. He felt something strange, not fear but recognition, as if the man in black reflected a truth the town had buried long ago. One evening, Elias asked his mother, "Why is everyone scared of him?" His mother hesitated. Because some people remind us of things we don't want to remember. That night, Elias decided something important. The next time Mr. Ashen walked beyond the edge of Graymire, he would follow. Elias waited until the town had settled into its evening quiet. Graymire always fell silent early, as if darkness pressed too close for comfort. Lamps glowed behind curtains. Doors were locked twice. Adults whispered instead of speaking. At dawn, Elias was already awake. He watched from behind the curtain as Mr. Ashen appeared, exactly as he always did, stepping into the street as if he had been walking it forever. The black coat moved slightly in the cold air. His pace was unchanging, steady, certain. Elias slipped outside. The stones were cold beneath his shoes. He stayed several steps behind, careful not to be heard. The man in black did not look back. Yet Elias felt strangely certain that he was already known. They passed the last row of houses, then the lamps. Then the road narrowed into a dirt path leading toward the old cemetery. No one in Graymire went there anymore. The gravestones leaned at odd angles, their names softened by time. The air felt heavier, thicker, as if sound itself struggled to move. Mr. Ashen finally stopped near a tree with dead branches clawing at the sky. You don't need to hide, he said calmly. Elias froze. Slowly he stepped forward. How did you know? Mr. Ashen turned. Up close his face was pale and unreadable. His eyes, however, held something unsettling, not emptiness but depth, like a place where too many memories had been stored. People who watch closely always think they're invisible, Mr. Ashen said. They rarely are. Elias swallowed. Are you dangerous? No, Mr. Ashen replied. But I am honest. That answer frightened Elias more than any threat. What are you? The boy asked. Mr. Ashen looked toward the cemetery. I am what remains when excuses are stripped away, he said. I exist where truth is avoided. Elias frowned. Do you punish people? Mr. Ashen shook his head. I don't punish. I reflect. He knelt, touching the soil lightly. People carry their guilt carefully. I simply remind them it's there. A wind moved through the trees, though Elias felt no cold. Then why did you come here? Because this town pretends it has forgotten, Mr. Ashen said. And forgetting is the most comfortable lie. Elias hesitated. Will you hurt my family? Mr. Ashen stood. Only if they hurt themselves first. The words made no sense, and too much sense at once. When Elias looked up again, the man in black was already walking away, deeper into the fog beyond the graves. Elias returned home shaken but changed. That morning, Graymere noticed something new. Mr. Ashen did not walk the usual road. Instead, he be Hogan visiting. Graymere noticed the change immediately. Mr. Ashen no longer limited himself to the main road. His morning walks began to bend. Slowly, deliberately, past homes, shops, and places people preferred not to think about. He did not knock. He did not announce himself. Yet somehow, people sensed when he was near, like pressure building before a storm. The first door belonged to the priest. Father Calloway had served Graymere for 20 years. His sermons were gentle, his voice steady, his smile practiced. He spoke often of forgiveness, though rarely of confession. When he saw the man in black standing near the church steps, his breath caught painfully in his chest. You shouldn't be here, the priest said. Mr. Ashen looked at the church doors. I go where I'm invited. I didn't invite you. No, Mr. Ashen replied calmly. But your silence did. Father Calloway's hands trembled. You're frightening people. Mr. Ashen turned his gaze back to him. Fear comes from recognition, he said, not from strangers. The priest swallowed. What do you want? To ask, Mr. Ashen said, stepping closer. How many prayers you used to hide from yourself? Father Calloway stepped back as if struck. That's blasphemy. No, Mr. Ashen said. That's memory. That night, the priest locked every door and slept with the lights on. Still, he dreamed of confessionals filled not with voices, but with echoes. His own words returning to him, twisted and sharp. The next morning, Graymere buzzed with rumors. Someone had seen Mr. Ashen near the judge's home. Someone else claimed he stood outside the school at dusk. The butcher swore he saw him reflected in a blade that wasn't polished. People began avoiding each other as much as they avoided him. Elias watched everything, from his window, from behind corners, from places where adults assumed children did not listen. He noticed something the others did not. Mr. Ashen never entered a house. He only stood nearby, close enough to be felt, never close enough to be blamed. At dinner, Elias asked, "Why don't we talk about him?" His father's jaw tightened. Because some things disappear when ignored. Elias thought of the cemetery, of the man's eyes. Some things grow instead, he said quietly. That evening, a scream broke the town's careful silence. It came from Judge Holloway's house. By morning, the judge was still alive, but he had resigned. No explanation, no farewell, only a note left on his desk with 4 words. I remember everything. And standing across the street, watching the house with quiet patience, was Mr. Ashen. Graymere understood then. The man in black was not passing through. He was staying. After Judge Holloway's resignation, Graymere changed its face. People smiled less. They spoke carefully, measuring every word as if language itself had become dangerous. The town still functioned. Shops opened, bells rang. Meals were cooked, but something vital had slipped out of place, like a picture hanging slightly crooked on the wall. Mirrors became the first problem. It started small. A woman in the market paused while fixing her hair, distracted by the feeling that her reflection was watching her back. A shopkeeper covered the mirror behind his counter after swearing it showed him older, meaner, less forgivable. By the end of the week, several homes had turned their mirrors to the wall. Mr. Ashen continued his walks. He stopped near windows now, near doorways, near places where people could see themselves reflected. glass, metal, polished wood. He never touched anything. He didn't need to. His presence alone seemed to awaken something that had been asleep for years. Elias noticed that people avoided their own reflections when he was near. One morning, Elias followed him again, keeping a careful distance. "Why mirrors?" Elias finally asked. Mr. Ashen didn't stop walking. "Because people fear being seen," he replied, "especially by themselves." "Do they see you in them?" Elias asked. Mr. Ashen paused. For a moment his reflection appeared in a shop window, black upon black, endless and deep. "They see what I remind them of," he said. "I am not the image. I am the question." That afternoon the butcher locked his shop early. He had been a large man once, loud and confident. Now his hands shook as he stared at the knives laid neatly on the counter. In the reflection of the blade, his face looked unfamiliar, harder, crueler. He remembered things he had laughed about, things he had excused, things he had never apologized for. That night, he confessed to his wife without being asked. She listened in silence. By morning, their shop was closed. Graymeyer began to understand something frightening. Mr. Ashen did not create guilt. He removed the comfort around it. Elias felt torn. Part of him admired the man in black. Another part feared what would happen if Mr. Ashen ever turned his attention fully toward someone innocent, or someone who believed they were. "Will you leave?" Elias asked one evening. "When the town no longer needs me," Mr. Ashen said. "And when will that be?" "When people stop lying to themselves," he replied softly. Elias looked around at the darkened houses, the covered mirrors, the closed doors. He understood then. Mr. Ashen might never leave. And somewhere deep within Graymeyer, something older than fear was waking up. Something that had been waiting for honesty far too long. Silence became Graymeyer's loudest sound. Conversations shortened. Laughter disappeared entirely. People spoke only when necessary, as if words themselves might betray them. Even footsteps were quieter now, careful and restrained. Mr. Ashen did not need to walk as often anymore. His presence lingered even when he was not seen. People felt him in empty rooms, in pauses between thoughts, in the seconds before sleep when the mind wandered where it was least welcome. The school closed without explanation. Parents told their children it was temporary, but no one believed them. Children stayed indoors, sensing the shift even if they did not understand it. Elias, however, understood more than most. He had begun to dream. In his dreams he stood in front of a mirror that did not reflect his face, only a dark space behind him. Mr. Ashen stood within that darkness, not threatening, not kind, just waiting. "Why do you watch me?" Elias asked in one dream. "I don't," Mr. Ashen replied. "You watch yourself." Meanwhile, the priest disappeared. Father Calloway's church stood open, doors unlocked, candles still burning. The townspeople gathered outside, but no one stepped in. By the time they finally did, hours later, the priest was gone. No signs of struggle, no note, only the confessional door slightly open. People whispered Mr. Ashen's name then, not loudly, not accusingly, more like a prayer or a warning. Elias saw Mr. Ashen that evening, standing near the riverbank. "Did you take him?" Elias asked. Mr. Ashen looked at the dark water. "He went where he believed forgiveness waited." "And did it?" Mr. Ashen said nothing. The river moved slowly, carrying reflections away. That night, Graymeyer fractured. A woman confessed to stealing from her neighbors. A man admitted he had lied in court years ago. Another locked himself in his home, refusing to speak at all. Truth spread unevenly, painfully. Some people broke under its weight. Others grew lighter, as if a burden had finally been named. Elias noticed something else. Mr. Ashen was fading. Not disappearing, but thinning, like smoke stretched too far. His edges blurred. His shadow grew shorter. "You're changing," Elias said. "Yes," Mr. Ashen replied, "because the town is choosing." "Choosing what?" "Whether to carry their fear honestly," he said, "or let it rot." Graymire stood on the edge of something irreversible, and Mr. Ashen waited to see which way it would fall. Not everyone in Graymire accepted what was happening. Fear had made some people honest, but for others fear demanded an enemy. They gathered quietly at first, men and women who believed the town had been cursed, that its sickness had a face and a name. They met in basements and back rooms, speaking in low voices, convincing one another that they were still in control. They spoke of Mr. Ashen. "He brings ruin," one man said. "He makes people weak," said another. "He should be driven out." By the end of the week, the group had given itself a purpose: remove the man in black, and Graymire would return to normal. Elias overheard them by accident. He was returning home when voices drifted through an open cellar door. He froze when he heard the name. The tone was sharp, angry, desperate. These were not confessions. These were denials. That night, Elias found Mr. Ashen near the edge of town. "They're coming for you," Elias said. "They think you're the problem." Mr. Ashen nodded, unsurprised. "They always do." "Will they hurt you?" Mr. Ashen looked at Elias for a long moment. "They can try," he said. "But understand this. People only destroy what reflects them too clearly." The group acted the next night. They carried lanterns and tools, telling themselves it was for protection. They found Mr. Ashen standing alone near the abandoned mill, black against the pale ground. "Leave this town," one of them demanded. Mr. Ashen did not move. "If I leave," he said, "what will you follow instead?" They advanced anyway, but something went wrong. The closer they came, the heavier their steps felt. Memories surfaced without warning, faces they had wronged, words they had twisted, moments they had buried. Some dropped their lanterns. Others fell to their knees, shaking. One man screamed and ran. The rest followed. By morning, the group had dissolved. No one spoke of it openly, but everyone knew. Graymire had tried to fight its own reflection, and lost. Elias found Mr. Ashen afterward, standing where the group had scattered. "Why didn't you stop them?" Elias asked. "Because resistance reveals more than obedience," Mr. Ashen replied. They learned what they were protecting. And what was that? Their lies. Mr. Ashen looked tired now, older. The black of his coat seemed less solid, as if it absorbed light without returning it. "The end is coming," he said. "For you?" Elias asked. "For the town," Mr. Ashen corrected. And somewhere deep beneath Graymire something shifted. A decision forming, ready to be made. The bell rang at midnight. No one rang it. The church bell had not been used since Father Calloway disappeared. Yet its sound rolled through Graymire like a summons. Doors opened slowly. Lights appeared in windows. People stepped outside, drawn by something they could not explain. Mr. Ashen stood in the town square. Not alone. Every reflection in every window pointed toward him. He did not speak loudly. He did not need to. "This is not a trial," he said. "No one is judging you." People gathered, keeping distance from one another. Shame is a lonely emotion. "This is a choice," Mr. Ashen continued. "Carry your truth or let it carry you." Silence pressed down. Then a woman stepped forward. She confessed to betraying her sister years ago for comfort. Her voice broke, but when she finished, she stood straighter than before. Another followed. Then another. Some spoke of crimes. others of cowardice. Some only whispered apologies to no one in particular. Not everyone confessed. A few turned away, covering their ears. They fled back into their homes, slamming doors, choosing darkness over exposure. Elias watched, heart pounding. He noticed something important. Each confession made Mr. Ashen fainter, less defined, like a shadow at noon. "Why is this happening?" Elias asked him quietly. "Because I am made of what they refuse," Mr. Ashen said. "When refusal ends, so do I." By dawn, the square was empty. Graymire felt different, lighter, quieter in a new way, but not healed. Some houses remained dark. Some doors never reopened. Elias searched for Mr. Ashen that morning. He found only black footprints leading nowhere. And for the first time, Graymire wondered, if the man in black vanished, what would be left behind? Morning arrived without ceremony. No fog, no shadows stretching unnaturally long. Just pale light in a town unsure how to breathe without fear pressing against its chest. Graymire woke slowly. People stepped outside as if expecting punishment. They found none. The streets were quiet but not tense. The silence felt earned, not imposed. Mr. Ashen was gone. At least, that's what everyone told themselves. Elias walked the streets searching for any sign of black, coat, shadow, reflection. There was nothing. No footsteps. No pressure in the air. For the first time since his arrival, the town felt empty in a way that did not hurt. Some people changed. The woman who had confessed in the square reopened her shop and greeted customers honestly, without rehearsed warmth. A man returned a piece of land he had stolen years ago. Small corrections were made quietly without applause. Others did not change at all. A few houses remained closed. Curtains drawn, mirrors still covered. Those inside refused to speak of the night, refused to remember. And then there were those who broke. One man was found sitting in the square at dawn, unable to move, whispering the same apology again and again. Truth, it seemed, could also paralyze. Elias found Judge Holloway's old house abandoned. The door creaked open easily. Inside, dust covered the furniture, but the mirror in the hallway was clean. Elias looked into it. For a moment he thought he saw black behind his own reflection. But when he blinked, it was gone. That afternoon, the town council met. They spoke carefully, avoiding the name they were all thinking. They agreed the events should not be recorded. Graymire would move forward quietly. No records, no warnings. Forgetting once again felt safer. Elias stood outside the meeting hall listening. He realized then that Mr. Ashen had not been the final test. The real test was what people chose after he left. That night, Elias dreamed again. He stood at the edge of the cemetery. Mr. Ashen was there, faint and distant like a reflection in dark water. "You're not gone," Elias said. "I don't need to be," Mr. Ashen replied. "You remember. What happens now?" "That depends," he said, "on who tells the story." Elias woke with a decision forming in his chest. If Graymire tried to forget, someone would have to remember. Time passed, but not evenly. Some days in Graymire felt ordinary again. Others carried a strange weight, as if the air itself remembered what the people tried to forget. The town moved forward, yet something trailed behind it. Quiet, patient. Elias began writing. At first it was only notes, fragments of memory scribbled in a small notebook he kept hidden beneath his bed. He wrote about the man in black, about the confessions, about the night the bell rang without hands. He told no one. Words felt dangerous, but silence felt worse. As Elias wrote, he noticed changes. Mirrors no longer unsettled him. Shadows behaved normally. Yet sometimes when he finished a page, The ink seemed darker than it should be, as if the paper had absorbed more than words. One evening his mother asked, "What are you always writing?" "Stories," Elias replied. She nodded, relieved. Stories were harmless. Truth rarely was. Elias walked the old paths often now, the cemetery, the riverbank, the square. He felt watched sometimes, but not in a threatening way. More like guidance. "You're doing what they won't," a familiar voice said one night. Mr. Ashen stood at the edge of the trees, not fully present, not fully gone. "I thought you were fading," Elias said. "I am," Mr. Ashen replied. "But truth doesn't vanish. It transfers." "What does that mean?" "It means Graymire no longer needs me," he said. "But it needs a witness." Elias's chest tightened. "Me?" Mr. Ashen nodded. "You saw without flinching. You listened. That's how it begins. I don't want to become you." "You won't," Mr. Ashen said gently. "You will become something harder to ignore." The next morning, Elias noticed people watching him differently. Not with fear, with unease. As if they sensed something shifting, something choosing a new shape. He wore no black coat. He asked no questions aloud. Yet when Elias looked at someone too closely, they looked away. Graymire had not escaped its reflection. It had simply passed the mirror on. Graymire tried to settle back into its old rhythms, but Elias no longer fit inside them. People greeted him politely, then ended conversations early. Shopkeepers avoided his eyes. Neighbors lowered their voices when he passed. No one accused him of anything. There was nothing to accuse. But unease followed him like a second shadow. Elias understood why. He remembered. Others remembered too, though they pretended not to. A woman stopped him near the river one afternoon. She was older, her hands rough, her eyes tired. "You saw him, didn't you?" she asked quietly. "Yes," Elias replied. She nodded as if confirming a fear. "I thought so. Some of us still dream." "How many?" Elias asked. "Enough," she said. "Too few." They did not form a group. That would have been noticed. Instead, they spoke in brief moments, on paths, in doorways, in passing. Small acknowledgments, shared glances. They were the ones who had confessed and not closed their eyes afterward. Elias wrote about them too. Not names, just choices. Mr. Ashen appeared less often now. When he did, it was brief, a reflection in glass, a shadow where none should be. He never spoke unless Elias addressed him. "You're almost finished," Mr. Ashen said one night. "With what?" Elias asked. "With becoming unnecessary." Elias frowned. "Isn't remembering important?" "It is," Mr. Ashen said. "But becoming a symbol is dangerous." "Symbols invite worship or destruction." Elias thought of the group that had tried to hunt. Mr. Ashen. "What happens when people get angry again?" "They will," Mr. Ashen said calmly. "They always do." Elias closed his notebook. "Then why leave anything behind?" Mr. Ashen's voice softened. "Because someone must choose honesty before fear demands it." The next day, a fire broke out in the old council hall. No one was hurt, but inside Elias saw what had burned. Records, meeting notes, documents. The town's attempt at erasure had turned desperate. Elias did not stop them. He wrote instead. That night, Mr. Ashen was gone again. This time, Elias felt no fear, only resolve. Graymire did not notice the moment it stopped being the center of the story. Life continued. Markets reopened, children returned to school, and people learned how to speak again without trembling. To an outsider, the town looked healed. To those who remembered, it looked carefully arranged. Elias knew better than to challenge it openly. Instead, he left. He told no one where he was going. He packed lightly, carrying only his notebook and a few clothes. The morning he walked past the town's edge, no one stopped him. A few watched from windows, relief and suspicion mixed in their eyes. Leaving felt easier than staying. Beyond Graymire, the world was louder, messier, less polite. But Elias noticed something familiar almost. Immediately, towns, with the same careful smiles, the same unspoken rules, the same fear of mirrors disguised as tradition. He stayed briefly in each place. He listened. And sometimes he spoke. Not about Mr. Ashen, not directly. Elias told stories instead. About towns that forgot too much. About silence that grew teeth. About honesty arriving quietly and leaving scars. Some people laughed. Some dismissed him. Some listened too closely. Those were the ones who dreamed afterward. Elias began to notice signs. A shopkeeper who suddenly returned stolen money. A woman who confessed a long-buried lie to her family. A man who broke down after hearing a story that felt too familiar. Elias never stayed long enough to see the consequences. One night, while resting near a roadside inn, Elias saw a reflection in the window behind him. Black. Mr. Ashen stood faintly, like smoke trapped in glass. "You're planting echoes," Mr. Ashen said. "I'm just telling stories," Elias replied. Mr. Ashen's outline flickered. "Stories are how truth survives distance." "Will you follow me everywhere?" Elias asked. "No," Mr. Ashen said. "Eventually you won't need me at all." Elias closed his notebook. What happens when people decide to destroy the stories? Mr. Ashen smiled sadly. Then they prove why the stories were necessary. By morning the reflection was gone. Elias moved on. Behind him Graymire faded, not erased, but reduced to a reference, a warning disguised as fiction. Ahead of him, new towns waited. And somewhere between truth and fear, the shape of a man in black continued to thin, his purpose almost complete, but not yet finished. Elias's stories traveled faster than he did. In some towns, people had already heard fragments before he arrived. Whispers about a traveler who told unsettling tales, stories that felt less like fiction and more like memory. Elias never corrected them. Names were dangerous. So were explanations. In one town, a crowd gathered after his telling. "You're talking about us," a man accused, his voice shaking with anger rather than certainty. "I'm talking about choices," Elias replied. The crowd did not like that answer. Truth was tolerable when it felt distant. When it felt personal, it became an insult. That night, someone tore pages from Elias's notebook and burned them in the street. He watched from a distance, heart heavy but calm. Destroying words did not destroy what they had already awakened. Still, the weight grew. Every story Elias told left something behind. Confessions, arguments, sudden changes. He was no longer just a witness. He was becoming a mirror, and mirrors were never welcomed for long. Mr. Ashen appeared again that evening, clearer than before. "This is the danger," he said. "You are being seen." "I don't want followers," Elias said. "You won't get followers," Mr. Ashen replied. "You'll get enemies." Elias laughed softly. "That's not comforting. It's honest." In another town, Elias chose silence. He listened instead, watching people bend their words around what they avoided. When he finally spoke, he told a gentler story, one without punishment, without disappearance. It unsettled them more than fear ever had. "You're changing the balance," Mr. Ashen warned. "Maybe balance is the problem," Elias replied. Mr. Ashen studied him carefully. "You're no longer just carrying the truth," he said. "You're shaping it." Elias felt the responsibility settle fully then, not as a burden, but as a choice he could no longer undo. The next morning, Elias woke to find his reflection unfamiliar. Not darker, not older, just steadier. Mr. Ashen was fading rapidly now. His edges blurred even when he stood nearby. "My time is almost done," he said. Elias nodded. "I know. Will you stop when I'm gone?" Elias closed his notebook gently. "No." Mr. Ashen smiled, for the first time without sadness. "Good," he said. "Then I was never the point." Mr. Ashen vanished quietly. No farewell, no final reflection. One morning, Elias simply woke and knew, whatever force had walked beside him since, Greymar was gone, not destroyed, not defeated, completed. For the first time, Elias felt alone. And then he realized the truth. He had never been alone. He had just never been responsible before. Elias reached a town larger than any he had seen yet. Its streets were crowded, its people loud, confident, impatient. Truth here would not arrive gently. It would be challenged, reshaped, mocked. This was where stories went to die or evolve. Elias spoke publicly for the first time, not as a traveler, not as a storyteller, as a witness. He told a story about a town that forgot itself, about fear disguised as order, about a man who wore black not to frighten, but to reveal. The crowd reacted instantly. Some laughed, some argued, some leaned forward, listening far too closely. Accusations followed. "You're manipulating people. You're spreading fear. You think you're better than us." Elias did not defend himself. "I'm not here to fix you," he said calmly. "I'm here to remind you that you already know." That was the moment the choice presented itself. He could soften the story, make it symbolic, remove its teeth, become acceptable. Or he could let it remain uncomfortable and accept what followed. That night, threats appeared scratched into his door. Warnings disguised as advice. Fear once again, looking for something to destroy. Elias sat alone, notebook open. He thought of Greymar, of covered mirrors, of confession night, of a man in black who never forced anything, only waited. Elias closed the notebook. He did not change a word. The next morning, he left the town before dawn. Not in retreat, in continuation. Somewhere behind him, people argued. Some confessed. Some denied harder than ever. The story had done its work. And far away, where no reflection reached, a shadow smiled. Not because it was needed again, but because it never truly would be. Years passed, not loudly, not cleanly. Elias became a name that drifted through conversations and faded again. Some remembered him as a storyteller, others as a troublemaker. A few remembered him correctly, as a reminder they never asked for. He never stayed anywhere long, not because he was running, but because staying too long turned stories into monuments, and monuments invited destruction. The world did not change dramatically. There were no great awakenings, no mass confessions, no final justice. Truth never worked that way. It moved quietly, unevenly, leaving small disruptions behind, cracks in carefully built lies. That was enough. In one town, a woman chose honesty over comfort and lost her position. She slept better afterward. In another, a man denied everything and lived peacefully, but never without fear. In another, someone told a story Elias had once told, slightly altered, imperfect, and that was how it survived. Elias grew older. His hair grayed. His hands carried ink stains that never fully washed away. The notebook was replaced many times, but the first one remained locked away, its pages too heavy to revisit. One evening, near the end of his travels, Elias stopped at a quiet place where glass reflected nothing but sky. For a moment he thought he saw black, but there was no figure, no coat, no eyes full of borrowed memory, only himself, and he understood. Mr. Ashen had not vanished because truth had won. He had vanished because truth no longer needed a shape. Fear still existed, lies still thrived, but somewhere between them, people had learned something dangerous. Looking away did not make things disappear. Elias smiled, not with relief, but with acceptance. He did not write that night. Some stories once released no longer belonged to the teller. As dawn came, Elias walked on, and in places where mirrors felt uncomfortable, where silence felt heavy, where honesty arrived uninvited, people would later say, there was no man in black. And they would be right, because by then, the reflection was enough.